like to introduce you to Sergio. He's going to talk about developers to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Good evening. My name, as Simon said, is Sergio, or if you prefer to call me the Spanish way, Sergio, or just Serge, if it's too hard for you. Well, first, a very brief introduction about me, very short. I'm not here to talk about me or about how an entrepreneur feels about business. I'm here to talk about my experience as a serial entrepreneur. I created my first company year 1999. It was a software development company. Then I participated into co-funding another company for e-commerce of ocean freight. I've been also in the real estate business. And lately, I'm the country manager of another software company that sells software here in Spain. It's a multinational company that sells software here. So I'm over 40, and hopefully I can share with you a little bit of my experience on selling software. Well, the first thing I would like to get into is what's the reason for creating a company? Why do you create a company? I created a company because I wanted to develop my own software. Well, basically, this is a mistake. A company exists basically to serve a market. If there is no market, then you are going to have no company. This is the key point. It's very important to begin with, because some people want to be independent, or just to put into practice an idea, or just have no boss. But that's all the wrong reasons. The market is a ruthless boss. Nobody is a happier person having the market as a boss than having another boss. So, as a consequence of this, what are the successful startups? The successful startups are the ones who create the right products for the right market. This is what the venture capitalists are looking at. If you talk to them, they will say, well, we're after a very good team, or we're after good ideas. This is not true. If they like the idea but do not like the team, they're going to search for another team, because there are plenty of people around usually trying to do the same thing. And if they like you but they don't like your idea, they're going to suggest you to jump into another project that they have. So what they're really after a market. And there are many misunderstandings when you start a company in which market you are. For example, I like this example. This is a toy. The average age of the Harley-Davidson buyer is 57-year-old. So they're not buying a motorbike. They're just rewarding themselves for how successful they have been in life. So they want a very fancy toy to write about and to show off. So once you understand that, you build these kind of products which are very cool and it's serving your market. So first thing, very, very important thing, understand the market. The next thing I had to face once I was into the market with the product is how to sell it. Okay, because I'm a software developer, and we all know that software developers usually do not like end users very much. We tend to just look at them as some kind of inferior people that is over there saying, hey, this is an end user. You are very happy in the university not having to talk to anybody. Then you're thrown into the well, and suddenly you have to face all these people getting requests. So you try to hire a salesman, where the key thing in my point of view is, what is a salesman? A salesman is a person who is only motivated by money. Because you, as a technician, as a geek, you're going to be motivated by other things, by the technology, by how much fun do you have building the idea, or about not anybody else patenting the same thing. But the salesman only cares about what is he going to take home by the end of the month. When I was in Silicon Valley, they used to say that salesmen are coin operated. You put a coin on them, they work. As long as you keep putting coins, they keep working and they keep selling. This is very good, because this is a part of a job that usually as a developer you don't want to do. You don't want to be driving in a car just around the whole country asking people if they want to buy something. On the other side, you cannot ask salesmen to be motivated about anything else. It's their job. Okay, I've already talked about a bit what motivates an engineer. It's proof that this very engineer achieved disruptive roles, self-employing. So from this idea, what are the common mistakes, or mistakes I've seen people make so often? Obviously, not knowing which market they are, over-evaluating the idea. Most of the times when you go to a meeting of entrepreneurs, there are several people with the same idea, or pretty much close. It depends on the implementation. If you just have a look at the internet, the first in the market was never the successful one. Not paying enough attention to the marketing mix. I will comment a bit more about this later. Marketing mix is basically how you distribute the product. You do not only focus on technology, but you also have to focus on the distribution channel. It's much more about understanding how are you going to make people read your product and know about you than actually having the best product. Signing bad agreements among partners. At the very beginning of my career, I used not to care about contracts at all. I thought that's okay, we reach an agreement, we're good, we shake hands, and we start doing things. Well, the fact is, and the truth is that writing good agreements among partners or with customers have saved my life more than once. So it's worth investing time and investing money into doing good contracts, because when something bad happens, I tend to enforce them. And this is especially important in United Kingdom. In Spain, for example, they're not so ruthless trying to enforce the contract. But one of the differences I found in this country is that they pull up the contract as soon as something is about to happen and the authorities are around. In the United States, they're very aggressive with the legal stuff. And last, not watching closely cash and finance. Cash in a startup is like the air. The first thing that a company that is recently created needs is cash. If you stop breathing, you die in 5 minutes. But because, as I said, you're motivated by other stuff, you're not motivated by cash. You tend not to look at cash. Or you think that you can always ask for more cash from the venture capitalist. Then you keep getting debt. Sometimes I meet people that is very proud because they have got an investment. And I said to them, I'm very sorry for you, because now you're into big debt. You're going to buy very expensive money. So do not keep getting debt and debt. So just for getting more cash and having more fun. So 3 keys to market access. Once that we have identified the market, we have the right salesperson, we have the right product, how do we get into the market? I very much like this idea, connect macroscopic from microscopic, is from Tim Berners-Lee. And basically, it states that you start by figuring out a very wide human need, like talking to each other or having the streets clean. And then you connect that with the very low level of how to implement a solution for that. I think this is how many of the greatest products are made. They start with something that many people need and solve technically how this need is achieved. The second thing I found very important is research not only the technology, but how customers use the technology. What are they going to do? You give the technology to them and they start to use it for totally unexpected ways. And last, understand the sales cycles and distribution channel. I will go a little bit more after for this, just in the next slides. I usually do not recommend books, but these 2 books, The E-Myth and Crossing the Chasm, how is that pronounced in English? Chasm? Chasm. Are a must read, are very classical books about how technical market works. So I can definitely recommend those. Once Geoffrey Moore is out, E-Myth. So good examples of how to connect macroscopic with microscopic. I like the seven deadly sins approach. This always works. If you create any product that is targeted at one of the 7 deadly sins, I believe you're going to be successful. Because they were written in the Bible thousands of years ago. Do not do this. And people keep doing it. So they're going to do that over and over and over. And there are plenty of examples about, well, Lost. Everybody knows how much of the whole internet traffic is born. Maybe, I'm not sure about the figure. I think something like 30%. Or it's not less, believe me. So YouTube, this is what Sequoia invested in YouTube, is $3.5 million plus 8, and this is how much they sold YouTube. Well, Gluttony, Roth, Twitter, Facebook. So it's a good approach. Just pick any of them and connect with the microscopic, and probably you're going to have a successful business like any of those ones. So next is strategies for designing a product. Basically, there are 2 main strategies. One is inside out, and the other one is outside in. Inside out is what do I have that the customers may need. It seems at the beginning that it's better to go first for market research, but many times that's not usually the case. One of my favorite products, or the software product, one of the software products that I would like to have invented is a compressor, is WinZip, because you are there at home, and suddenly you try to fit something into an old 3.5 inches disc, and it does not fit because the file is too big. So you must do something about it. So you write a compressor, and then you realize that there are millions of people out there that have exactly the same problem like you, and you start just selling it. Most of the compressors, the home use compressors, are started by one person developing for himself, and then just putting it into the market. They used to advertise in the old magazine, Dr. Dobbs, very old computer magazines when we go to the shop and still have to buy. Yeah, most of you for sure have used the technology the old way, buying the magazine every month and just reading through the articles to figure out how stuff works. Obviously, the other one is outside in. It's just do a market research and think what are the resources that what you can build that market could be demanding. Well, two very quick examples. One is HP, founded in 1939, $500 capital. The first product is interesting. It was a sound filter for cinemas, and they started selling it at $54 when the competitors were selling at $200. It was actually less than it costed them to produce, so it seems suicide strategy. They got a good reference with Disney for movie Fantasia, so this started moving the business. And then they went public in 1957, and in the 72, they created the first pocket scientific calculator called HP 35 because it had 35 bottoms. The remarkable thing in my point of view about these products is that they were best overall. And if we compare this to, for example, what Sun Microsystems did over 10 years, they just keep moving one direction, the other direction, just do this. At a certain point, it seemed to me, if you have followed a little bit the history of Sun, that they were more concerned about damaging Microsoft's sources of revenue than creating any real business for themselves. So I've been in some, when it still existed, I was in some Microsystems talking with many people, and they said to me things like, we're going to show you how much revenue has OpenOffice stolen from Microsoft Office last quarter. And I asked, well, I'm not interested on how much you have stolen from Microsoft. I'm interested from how much have you get into your cash. No, because it's free. We've not done any money. So where's the business about? And as you know, it ended up with just selling it all to Oracle. In my point of view, one of the mistakes from Sun was not being strong enough in assessing a hit. When you try to put something into the market, it's like kind of doing martial arts, karate. You just do a hit, and if you fail, you just cover yourself back very quickly. But if you just start just waving your hand like this, yeah, you're gonna be off guard and you're gonna be bitten. So it's important that once a product wants to go into the market, it's done with great passion, also a lot of resources. And as I said, as a martial art punch, otherwise it's not going to work. And this is what, in my point of view, Sun did not do. They start just creating projects and different platforms, but none of them was really strong enough to beat the competitors. The other example was Microsoft when Bill Gates was just running it. They used to defeat each and every target that they was in the eye. We used to call it the Sauron's eye from the Lord of the Rings, because if you were caught by the Nazgûls, you're going to be killed. And then when Bill Gates stepped out of Microsoft, they lost this sharp focus on defeating competitors. And you all know they've been losing one market after the other, pretty much like Sun Microsystems. So a little bit more in tactics for product designs, things that we have used. As I said, best products often start by solving the needs of the one who created them. As I mentioned, the compressors. It's not always necessary to build the best product. Usually, software, as Geek Kawasaki said, is don't worry, be crappy. All commercial software is just a little bit crappy, because if you have to make it perfect, usually you're going to be late. If you let an engineer decide when it's going to be the release date, you're never going to release, because it's never going to be ready. Because they are always going to be performing changes and adding new features and making it more perfect, and you're never going to market. So you never go to market when you're ready. Cool designs matters every day more, as you've learned from Apple. It's just no longer enough to have a good product. It must be fancy, good looking. Many engineers overlook this. They just do a product that works, but it's not good enough. This is more a problem in the South, where I came from, Spain. Products lack design. Maybe in France or in United Kingdom and other countries are more aware about how important is the design, the packaging, that it looks fancy. Innovation is seldom in technology. Most company, if you look at the budget of a company like HP, the R&D budget is not more than 15%, and it must not be. They try to innovate in many other areas in how they distribute. A very good example for that, or my favorite example for that, is Zara, the Spanish clothes seller. I don't know if you're aware about this strategy, but their strategy is basically they change everything in the shop every 2 weeks. So they're forcing people to buy, because many people, they go to the shop and they see something and they think, well, I will buy it next week, maybe before the end of the season, there's going to be a hard discount, so I can come back. No, you go back after 2 weeks and that lovely skirt is not there. They do this by using as a support a very strong information system. Part of the success of Zara relies on this capability of managing the stock around, because what they do is they change the stock from one shop to another. That requires very complex logistics, and they have a lot of very complex business intelligence algorithms developed at the MIT, just to tell each truck what it must deliver to its shop at any given moment. So the innovation is really in the technology that they use to distribute the clothes among the shops. Well, obviously, companies must be reinventing. A technological company must reinvent itself. It's 5 years. If you are a very small startup and you're running in front of big players, you have 2 years until they catch you, 5 years to start reinventing, and in 10 years you must have been completely transforming the companies. Otherwise, you're going to be out of the market. And as I said before, passion matters. Doing things with utmost passion is important. Well, 4 biggest naive ideas I've found talking to people. Great fool. You build something, someone will buy it for more than it costed you. Many engineers, surprisingly, think it's not the case. The great believer is if you build a part of something, someone will come and complete the rest. Customers buy solutions, not pieces of a solution. You can still make a business by selling components, by selling parts, but usually if you want to go directly to the market, you need to have the whole solution or be able to tell the customer how to complete the solution. It's very hard to sell pieces, or you end up having low margin because the margin is in who controls the scarce resource. And the scarce resource is usually the end user. It's usually the client. So if you're just building components and selling to somewhere else, you're not going to be controlling the scarce resource, which is client access. You're just going to be low paid, unless you have a very unique technology, of course. If you are a pharmaceutical lab and you have a medicine that nobody else knows how to manufacture, some medicines do not have generics just because nobody knows how to create that medicine. There is a chemical process. And it's not only that there is a patent or there is another alternative, it's just that only in that lab they know how to build that medicine. So then you can have a higher margin, and even in that case, they had to bargain very hard with public administration, obviously, because there are people in the NHS who is specialized in not overpaying for medicines, and they bargain very hard. Oh, gonna run out of battery. So, taxes for easing sales. How do you put a product into the market? Are you trying to? Well, I'll leave you with that. Okay. First, offer rates. Sometimes it's very hard to win a bid. When you have a startup and you try to go to the customers and knock at the door, they usually have a complex process of certificating or buying or not. So this means that it does not really matter who is winning the contract as long as they need a supplier. So sometimes you're just providing, you let someone else be the runner and you become the drug dealer for the runner. So he runs and you just make money by selling him what he needs to run. This can be a very successful business model. Offer alternative medicines. Customers buy when none of the usual solution works. So you approach the customer and they have been visited by all these big players, nothing worked. So you just present something different and they try. Some customers are available after a big disaster, so they try to hire a big player with the strategic resources, with the best consultant, best everything. They've miserably failed and they need someone to the rescue. It's a little bit risky because once they're in rescue mode, they have usually burned most of his cash. So when you go to sell, they are there after a disaster and they don't really have the money because they burn the money into another project. So you have to do your solution at hard discount. Exploit fear is another usual tactic, especially, for example, when there is a regulation, or, for example, it happened in the banks when they all ran mad about compliance because they had to comply with some regulations because there were big scandals. So they were very much in a hurry, and there was a rush in fintech about selling products for compliance just because they were in fear. Web 1.0 was all about fear. They thought that they were losing the train of the internet, so they had to rush. Okay. Don't worry, be crappy. We have already talked about this. Be the convenience store, which is just being the low-cost supplier. This has not any big secret, just next. One successful tactic that I've employed in the past is just take a map and make a circle around the office, and in 20 miles see who can buy things from me. If you do that in central London, there's going to be 1,000 times more purchasing power than you could sell. So you just walk around and do the selling. And sell trust. I'm going to skip this one. I would say that when you sell software, and in general, when you sell business to business, you're only selling trust. Oh. You finally decided to die. So, as I was saying, some people, I like to ask this question to the developers and the salesmen: what are we selling? And some of them think we're selling bytes, or we're selling solutions, or we're selling, no. Basically, you sell trust. You sell the trust of the person who is betting on you that that's going to work, that he's not going to be fired, and that everything is going to be good. So it's all about getting the trust.
You can use that as a cue. It's probably easier the more in.
To finish, I'm going to say a few words about how to enter an account, how to approach a very big customer. So you have the product, you're sure that these people is needing the product. Sorry, these people are needing the product. People is a single word in Spanish, by the way. So we'll find a lot of Spanish people making that mistake. So how do you get in touch? Because there are all sorts of men in the middle and people interested in not you gaining access. As I said, they're trying to control customer access. So how are you going to gain customer access? The first thing is locate the right person inside the company. The right person inside the company is seldom a very high-level top executive. Don't try to contact the president or chief executive officer. They're too busy. With a startup, it's usually easier to find a champion. At every company, there is an engineer or a middle manager who is keen on achieving something, on gaining a competitive advantage. And because, as we said, the product is going to be a little bit crappy. It's not going to be perfect. What is needed is an early adopter. So the first step is finding the champion inside the company. In my personal experience, contacts on top-level executive for a startup didn't work. That's a sales tactic used by big consulting firms. They talk to the president, or they even put people in top positions because they do some strategic consulting, and then people move from the strategic consulting firm to the client. So they actually place key persons on the accounts. But that's a strategy that can work for a big consulting firm, not for a startup company, because you do not know anybody in the board who could be talking to the middle manager. So most of the times it's bottom up. So as I was saying, the next thing is offering this champion something that gives him a competitive advantage, explaining him how is he going to go faster. Usually they want to do a project because they are in a marketing department or finance department. If it's a bank, maybe they want to gain operational capabilities because they're spending a lot of money in human resources, or they just want a new website for a campaign and they cannot get it ready for Christmas. Okay. The other important thing when you're selling a new product is mention reference. Who bought the product? Who is your customers? If you don't have any reference, just use yourself. In my first customer, I tried to sell, and my first project as an entrepreneur was building the Spanish Yellow Pages online. So what happened is that I brought a good idea to the table, but obviously they were trying to create the first Yellow Pages online. Now Yale bought them. So were they going to trust just a startup? Why? And I said the truth. I said, well, I've never done this in my life. I have these ideas. Call my former employer. And they did. The former employer was very happy with my work there. So they said this to me. So yeah, we called your former employer, and he said that you used to be good at this. So we have decided to give you a chance. So if you do not have any customer references, just use yourself. This may work at the beginning. Use this, obviously, as we said, to generate trust. If you meet a good salesman and you see him in action, he's going to spend maybe 75% of the time talking about the customer, talking about him, about his hobbies, about his family, about what he would like to achieve in life, and then 25% of the time talking about the product, because it's all about what the person in front of you wants, not about what the product does. So if you go just to a meeting and start talking about your product and you do not clearly explain to the person who's going to buy what is there for him, probably you're not going to close the deal. It takes time to build this trust. The sales cycle in software in many products is very long. For business-to-business software, is usually no less than 6 months, and it's usually 12 to 18. This is important when planning for cash, because it means that the first year you're not going to sell a penny. Even if you have a good pipeline, you're not going to be there. Another barrier that can appear is not becoming eligible for being certified. Certification is usually an excuse. When you go to a customer and they say to you, we cannot buy from you because you're not certified. In my experience, it means we're not really interested. Because if they want to certify you, then they certify you. They just put you in touch with the certification department and they make the certification. And it's not that big deal. So it's usually an excuse. So it's necessary to be patient, it's necessary to move slow, but then it's also important to be very aware of what's going on and move very fast. I've sold a lot of projects during the summer because in Spain there is a gap of 2 months where everybody is on holiday. So you just move around the accounts, just figuring out who is willing to do something in short term and it has pick the phone and everybody is on holiday, and then you move fast and in 2 months you just put the harpoon and then pull. All right. It's better to go, in my experience, after small wins than very big wins. Usually the big shiny project has too many focus, is too much visible. So in a customer, it's better to do a small project and then grow. This is also important because of the certification. Because if you're selling £50,000 at the beginning, nobody's going to watch at that because you're too small. If you try to sell $500,000 or 1 million, then the Nazguls of the Lord of the Rings are going to come after you. So it's much better to split the project. If you want to sell £500,000 to a customer, it's much better to split in 10 chunks of 50,000 so that nobody realizes what's going on and you pretend not to exist. It's better not to be there, not to be visible. A common mistake is gaining visibility too early. If you gain visibility, they're going to chase you, they're going to come after you. So if you have this magic ring, you better hide it under your shirt and nobody sees you. So you walk like this, like a hobbit. You're small and negligible. Nobody needs to care, but it's a thing. It's a better strategy. Another very important thing as an entrepreneur is not scaring people by announcing that you're going to alter the status quo. If you go to a company and you announce that you're going to shake the company, that you're going to put positions at risk, that your product is so disruptive that somebody's going to lose his job, then for sure you're going to be sabotaged. So it's important, or if you try to do a business transformation, that takes forever because you will face resistance. What happened to the Spanish Yellow Pages online is that it was mostly sabotaged by the commercial for selling paper. There were an army of people selling classic paper Yellow Pages. So these people obviously was not very happy with the idea that the customers has a self-service like Google AdWords. And in fact, we created some kind of Google AdWords, but they bundled the Google AdWords with the paper. So you could not use the Google AdWords unless you have bought also the paper. Because if you can buy only the Google AdWords and not the paper, who is going to buy the paper? So altering the status quo was ultimately what delayed the project so much that from a very new project, they lost completely the speed, the initial speed, and just got behind the competition. the last thing is that I've seen as a mistake is it is important to invest in the relationship, but it's not necessary to give away anything. I've been in projects where the customer starts saying that he's going to buy and puts you to work and make research and make prototypes and keeps you for 1 year working basically for him, doing consulting jobs, and he never buys anything. So I'm strongly against giving away anything because it takes a lot of time. I think the biggest folder in my first company was lost projects. We spent a lot of time running after projects where the customer had no real intention of buying. So it's better to ask. You just ask the customer, say, do you have any real intention of buying or not? What's the time frame? But what are we here for? And I no longer accept excuses like we have to run a committee or maybe this is going to be in the budget of NetQuarry. It's a simple yes or no, and what's the probability? It's reduced to, do you have any real intention to buy, and how many other suppliers do you have, and who are the other suppliers? I no longer go to a project where the customer is not clear about who are the other suppliers. Tell me so that I can evaluate my chances. If they start saying, well, we can't tell, that's a secret, forget, you are not going to be the chosen. If you are the chosen, you know who are the other suppliers. And because they want you to have an advantage and they want you to reveal the other suppliers and add in your value proposition what is there. I don't know if this is something a little bit more. No. I think we can close the sales. I have more slides, but I think that's been enough of your patience and your attention, ladies and gentlemen. So, Simon, what would be the next step? Anybody would like to ask any questions, make suggestions? Oh.
Do you think the app market is one worth chasing?
Sorry?
Do you think the app market in phone apps are worth chasing? And how does that affect your kind of purchase lead times?
Apps is an interesting market because they're modifying the way people use the internet. Everybody's mad about apps, and I think they're right because there is a change. As I mentioned, it's not only technology, but it's about how people use the technology. So we used to visit the website. There was a time, do you remember, when they were mad about domain names and that you have this side of your web page as your home page, and you start by going to this portal, going to Yahoo, or going to Google, or going to Terra in Spain. Now people is using the internet through the apps. So the battle is putting an icon on the desktop of your phone. And if you look at some apps, the app is nothing else than a web browser. You open the app and you're on the internet and you're browsing the internet from inside the app in HTML5. So yes, it's worth chasing. It has its own tricks, especially I'm not an expert on B2C apps, okay? The limited experience that I have is that it's very risky because you heavily depend on Apple, especially being keen or not on being in their show. I've seen apps banned because they were free. And when you have a free app, I met a guy who had 3 apps in the top 10 of Apple Store, and he was banned because Apple was doing no business with that apps. So you must get them into the business in order for them to be happy. So yeah, definitely, if you know the rules and you have the business intelligence on how to make your app be well positioned, I think it's right now a better strategy. People go with the phone and they commute. This is the new use. Nobody has a keyboard. This is from the past. This is because I'm a software developer. My wife does not have a laptop. She uses a tablet. She does no longer write. This is very important for product design because if you don't have a keyboard, you cannot just text easily. People send pictures and things like that. This completely modifies the user experience. And that's happening. That's how people use the internet while they are in the train. So yes, my answer would be go for the apps.
Do you use any project management sort of theories like Agile or Prince2 in your development processes? And what do you think of them, if there's any benefits to one or the other?
Agile, well, Prince is basically a methodology that is being discontinued. Some government projects or a big project uses still Prince. Most people is doing Agile. It's such a best practice that is no longer a best practice. It's for me more a common practice. I must be very careful because this could be on air. Sometimes I'm me saying I'm not entirely happy with Agile. Maybe not good for my reputation, but I'm going to say why I'm not entirely happy with Agile. Agile is a methodology created by developers and for developers. Okay, so the basic statement is maximize the productivity per hour of the developer. So first, only about 30 or 40% of the time needed to develop a software is actually coding. The other 60% or maybe 70% is not coding. So first, you're optimizing on that 30%. Moreover, you're optimizing depending on the developer. So it's developers take the power. So we used to have these account managers, and we said, no, account managers are very bad. They're always changing their requirements, and they don't know what to want, and they're just messing around, and we cannot work any good with them. So what we did, we fired the account managers, and we converted the program managers into account managers. So there are companies who are prisoners of the developers, because you want to do something, and you just cannot go to the developers and ask. They are going to say you how must it be done, and when can you have it, okay? So it's kind of falling prisoner of the developers. And the last thing that it is my concern about Agile is that is it usually used, it lacks of a global optimization strategy. So if you have an Agile team, for example, and you depend on external resources, typical project is that you go to a company and you have to develop a website, and you're Agile, but then you have a database administration department, and the database administration department is not Agile, and the marketing department is not Agile, and you're the only one Agile. What happens is that you are the bottleneck. There is a very popular book, for sure most of you know, it's called the Goal, probably, Gold Rat. It's about global optimizing. So Agile is for managing teams, but a project is more than a team. So you must have a wider look, because otherwise developers start being paid by the hour. So you have these £100 per day. So you have people that is earning money per day because they're presumably very productive, but they just sit like here, like this, waiting for something else to happen. And they're bloody expensive. So last, what happens also with Agile is that there is a shift in the market. 10 years ago, we used to sell end-to-end projects. So we went to the customers and we said to the customer, what do you need? What's broken? So, okay, leave it to me, and I will come back in 2 months with a solution. This is my solution. Well, customers were not always happy with what we charged or what we delivered. And they started to try to manage the projects themselves. So they learned how to manage the projects. So many customers are now capable of looking inside your project and having their own project manager. This is good for the customer, but it also creates this shift from fixed price. You pay me this many pounds, and I give this to you. You pay me by the day. So if you pay me by the day, you want to keep me busy, because for me it's not as good as fixed price because my margin is going to be lower, but for you it's going to be more expensive because I cannot be doing something else, and if I just stop, you're going to be paying for me doing anything. More?
This is quite a long question, so what's your take on service management in terms of what you talked about? So to me, service management is the day-to-day running of the software or the widget that you've produced as a product manager.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've also mentioned, I know developers who just want to look at new technology, keep developing new functionality, and not that interested in working with customers and providing the day-to-day support and services that clients need. And it kind of goes back to me, I think service delivery is quite key to developing and maintaining the trust that you kind of mentioned before with the product. So what's your take on product and service delivery?
Because I will go down there. First, a caveat. Because of being a consultant, I usually run away from the project before service delivery, because we go there, we reach the end of the Gantt, just deliver it, this is my money, bye-bye. So, but if you have to do the maintenance, First, probably you need two different sets of people. When you want to conquer a new territory, and you Brits are conquerors, there is out there a map of how many countries have not been conquered by the British. I think the exact figure is 23. Only 23 countries have not been invaded by the United Kingdom. So how do you do the invasions? You first want to send the special forces. So you have these special operation guys which are very aggressive and just go there and just beat the enemy very hard, and they shoot at everything that moves. These guys are very dangerous because are all the day shooting, and you don't want them to have a relationship with the civilians. So then you have another different kind of soldiers which are much more peaceful. And then you have the police, because you don't want armored people around because get people nervous. So the first thing I would do for service delivery is set up different teams. I would like personally to send the developers to eat their own dog food, because many of them definitely deserve it. So yeah, send them with the end users and send them to actually perform some of the tasks for a full day. So go there and do it yourself. Try to do it yourself, but not with the compiler just fixing the RAM. So do that. So I think it's a good idea that the developers get a feeling of how much pain they are creating on a daily basis, okay? They're insensitive. I mean, as a developer, I hate that, because I became a developer because I do not want to have a relationship with human beings. And then I'm sent to the end to see the customer. So that's not fair. I want to be in the lab, not talking to anybody. So, but yeah, it's good that you send them. Then you need good service delivery tools. You need to very clearly record what's going on to make an internal accounting of what's happening in a product, what has been bug fixing, what is a new feature requested by the customer, who did, and you need to figure out how much money is that costing. If you try to do it with an agile tool like Jira, you can completely set up the tool so that if you force people to use it, it's going to give you more or less good reports. They're never 100% accurate because it's very difficult to record the time of what people is doing if they're mixed. So my reply would be, try to have a dedicated support team, because there are people, for example, I hired once a person, I needed someone to help in an account. And I did not have very much money, so I decided to go for somebody junior. And he had no real good CV. And I asked him, what you have been doing lately? And he said, I've been a Boy Scout leader. And I thought, if he was a good Boy Scout leader, he would be a good user leader, because users are like Boy Scouts. So, and this person was not very sharp, was not extremely smart, but it was much better than me in keeping a relationship with the end users, because I talk very fast and I overwhelm people. So I go to talk with the end users, I go into the PC, said, look, this is done this way, blah, 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 blah. And the poor end user is kind of overwhelmed by, oh my God. On the other side, this man, he was much slower. I was very frustrated at the beginning trying to explain to him some things, and I nearly fired him because it took so much time for me to explain anything to him. But then when he went to explain this to the end user, because he was on the same page as the end users really loved him. They loved the slow pace at which he explained everything with a lot of detail and very slowly. So he was a different kind of person. He was never a brilliant developer, but a support technician, and he was also happy maintaining other people's code. So it's also about recruitment. Recruitment is broken, but that would be a completely different story. So in brief, get the right human resources, try to involve these superstars, and get the right tools so that you can present to top management what is the reality of how much money is costing to fix the mess that this superstar developer has created.
I think one of the bigger challenges as starting applications is getting the initial funding for that business. How would you go for, what would you recommend for start to get that initial budget?
Okay. I have a conflict with that, because if you believe business or startups are usually Boolean, 1 or 0. Not always, because you can be somewhere in the middle, not being completely successful, not being completely failed, then you become a vegetable. That's dangerous, becoming a vegetable company. But if you believe in the business, you want to keep it all. So if I really believe in a business, I want to take it all, and I want the most of the property I can get out of the business. So I would first try to do it without any PCs, just trying to sell, getting invoices. That's how I grew my first company. I was very lucky because I was in a room like this and I was pitching for investment for my company. I was trying to develop a content management system. And then what happened is that people started approaching me not to offer money, saying that they wanted to buy the product. So, and I have not even started. I was looking for money for building a product, but they were so in the need of something that I just decided that I will build the product on the run. I lost a few partners. So if you can do it with customer invoices, definitely. Then there is a tipping point where you have already references and some sales where it's worth going after VCs. That point is when your trend starts to look good, go out, because that's when your company valuation is going to be much better. If you pitch VCs when you have no sales, you're going to get a very low company valuation unless you are an ex-Google top executive or something like that, all right? Then pitching the VCs is an art in itself. It's about making them believe that you don't really need their money, that you just want to move a little bit faster. Obviously, you need the money and you're running out of cash. So it's important to manage the timing. They will try you to run out of cash. They will say, yeah, we are interested. Yeah, but let's do a due diligence or something like that. So a VC wants you to be very much in the need of the cash because then he can bargain you. So after pitching, the ideal situation is pitching the VC when your sales are growing, because you just project the line, say to the VC, look, we're here, but look at how the sales figure is going up. So if you do not do the deal this month, next month, we're going to be more expensive. And I'm not in a hurry. If you are in a hurry, be careful, because they will say that they will close the deal next month, and they won't do. They will just wait with an excuse to see if you are in the need. All right? Then depend on the kind of VC that you want. My personal experience, for example, with the company selling ocean freight, we decided to divide the VCs into three because we thought that three different VCs would have less power than just one, so that we could create some kind of board where we balance. My problem, this is a very specific situation, was that the company did break even before the expected, but we were only in the Spanish market. So we were profitable in the Spanish market. So we wanted to go for a next round before we planned for going to United States. But one of the VCs did not want to put more money, nor wanted anybody else to come in. He just wanted to cash. Not even selling, just because the revenue was good and the profit was good. So it took us from about 18 months to unblock that situation. But they're easy. If you go to central London, the good news here is that there are plenty of them, and people does not know what to do with the money. There is a problem in the VCs that there is a lack of good startups. There are plenty of entrepreneurs, but honestly, the average quality of many of them is not enough. They're not at the stage where they could really be invested. Or if the company can be invested, they have burned so much cash that by the time you go to invest, the debt is so big that the VC cannot go in. All right? Another question more specific about the VCs? Because they're sharks. I could be talking about VCs for the rest of the night.
Just on your last point, do you think then, especially in London, do you think there are like too many of these incubators that allow basically anyone that has just even a vague idea to be given a little bit of money and then sort of develop the idea, then compete for VC money? Do you think?
Well, probably you are right, but for me, when I created my first company, I used to get advice by looking at my belly. So, and I made so many basic mistakes because there was nobody around. And I ended up being a mentor myself, just telling people how many mistakes I made. And I wish I had not made. So I think it's good that the more support an entrepreneur has, the better. Obviously, once a market booms, there are plenty of people moving around that they have no actual experience and they just repeat, or they have no real good ideas. Probably you're right. I've not been into this show business of London very much lately because I'm no longer looking for that kind of accelerators. So yeah, I'm trying to, because I have really another speech on how to select a business accelerator. So I'm trying to make a very quick brief on the quality, but probably it all goes down to the quality of the mentors, to looking at who is there and what they have actually done, how many of them, and how much time they devote, because usually these incubators, they have superstars that presumably are going to be around, but then they're not doing the actual mentorship. So I would focus on who is doing actually the mentorship in the incubator. It's the people advertised at the website, so ask for how much time, how much access to them. I once met a mentor of this one of the incubators, and the first thing he told me, he's very important, he's very successful, busy also, but he said to me, before you tell me anything, I'm going to tell you something. I've got a big boat and I like to sail. So be fast. Anyone else? More questions? Good. Thank you very much then, gentlemen.